All right. Well, let's hit one more phone call if we can, and then I promise we'll get back to this conversation. Yeah.
Sounds great.
Awesome. All right. We're going to talk to Red in Ohio. Red, what's on your mind tonight?
Hi, Red.
Hello. I just wanted to call you guys because I was thinking about this. This is something I think about constantly.
Yeah. What is that?
My family always called me a tomboy, and I remember always hating it even to this day. So I kind of wanted to discuss how calling somebody a tomboy is potentially sexist to that person. I consider it to myself if somebody calls me a tomboy to be kind of sexist because whenever it was like talked to me about that, it was kind of in a passive aggressive derogatory term because my parents are very Christian. It's like, oh, she's a tom girl. Like it was something.
We just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hear it. I think the most important piece here is just what it feels like when somebody else insists on describing our aesthetic or describing our gender when it's contrary to what we feel and experience.
Right.
So whether the term tomboy or any of these other ideas are inherently problematic or sexist, which I think there is an interesting case to be made there. But even setting that aside, just the simple fact that somebody would say that they know more about you and your identity than you do, that's always going to rankle, right?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest reason why I get mad when people call me a tomboy. I know I'm not like I recently discovered I don't fully identify as a girl. I'm a demigirl, so I don't identify fully as a she or a he. I'm just she, they, like it says on my call screen. But when growing up, I didn't know about all these genders, and I didn't know why I was so angry when people called me a tomboy or like that, because I didn't know really who I was then. But I also didn't like being called a tomboy, even though that's what described me best back then, because there wasn't really another word back. There wasn't. I never even heard of demigirl when I was growing up. I don't even know if it was a thing when I was younger or what. But I feel like demigirl is a much nicer term and something that you can identify with more than tomboy. Because to me, tomboy just sounds derogatory, and I just don't know if it's one of those words that has been used in a bad way, and if it's a word that we can start using in a more positive way to get it to mean something positive. But again, I don't know. I personally wouldn't use tomboy to describe myself just because of past notions with it. But I don't know how other people feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds like one of those words that can be used as something of a slur. And, if you don't believe that anything can be a slur, just imagine your shittiest relative saying the nationality of somebody from a different ethnicity, right? There is so many opportunities to put a derogatory spin on these things, particularly when we're talking about gender identity and some of this stuff. But I don't know. Eve, do you feel like this term is inherently problematic or universally problematic?
I think it's subtly problematic. When I think of the term tomboy, I think of a term that we often would use to describe a young girl who doesn't fit exactly society's idea of what it means to be a young girl. Because we typically don't use tomboy to describe older people. And to me, it's a phrase I heard a lot in the 90s. I was called that. And it was something that was said to me if I was, wearing overalls and rubber boots that day instead of a girly dress like my sisters, or it was something that was said if my hair was disheveled like a boy's. It was these very binary, girls are like this, boys are like this, and so if you don't fit this exact little girl look, then we're going to call you tomboy, to kind of explain it away instead of just making room for me to just be a kid. And so I think that's why because this term tomboy is, I've thought about this a lot actually. I have such a problem with it just because I think it can come across as derogatory, but more than anything, I think it's trying to identify kids as these things where they're just existing as little humans that are, um, not even, I wasn't trying to identify any particular way when I behaved in those ways or dressed in those ways, or had the friends that I had at the time, and still I was called tomboy. So I can totally see how that would feel triggering in a way, and really upsetting, because like Christy said, it's taking your identity away from you and having somebody else kind of force um, their idea of gender on you.
Yeah, thanks for pointing out I guess, the diminutive nature of it, because it is a term that we generally use for kids, and I don't think I noticed that, but we as a patriarchal society
Yeah.
do really like to infantilize not just little girls, but also young women, and I think
Mhm.
that term can really be used in that way.
Yeah. And another problem is tomboy. I think most people don't think of it as derogatory. Like, it's considered, if anything, like a little quirky way to reference a young girl. But then a little boy, if he were behaving in a way that they would not deem as manly for a young boy, which is already ridiculous, they'd say something like he's being girly or whatever. And that is absolutely meant as a derogatory term. So it's,
Hmm.
again, the whole patriarchal thing where being a tomboy is almost like this cool, like, oh, nice, you're dad's little tomboy. Like, that's cool. Like, that's okay to have the same kind of
You can
characteristics
drive
as
a
a wet sis.
tractor and, yeah,
Exactly,
wear
yeah.
boots.
Yes. So suddenly you're better. But if you're girly, if you're a little boy being girly, like you're crying or
Sissy
you're
and
displaying emotions, yeah, you're a sissy. And that shows already, like, how the patriarchy negatively affects um men and women equally. Not in
Oh
the same
yeah,
ways, but
that
as far
happened
as
to
it
my
impacts
brother a
them.
lot. He's called girly.
hmm
I didn't live. Me and my brother didn't grow up in the best of households, so I guess that's why I was have a bit of a. I guess I think negatively towards those terms for people. I've been watching the chat, and I see that some people actually identify as a tomboy, and I do think that's great if they see it as a positive thing. I wish I could, but with how my past is, I just can't. Or else I might be okay with somebody calling me a tomboy, but it just goes back to me thinking how my parents viewed me and how they wanted me to be a certain way and all that, and just kind of put that label on me themselves instead of me figuring out for myself. And what you're saying about, like, I was a kid just, and I didn't know how to identify myself then. I was just living.
hmm
So I don't think it was fair to be have an identity attached to me when I didn't have the tools, or even at that age, the thought process to even identify myself at the time. So yeah, that is that's definitely going to make me think a lot more about this.
Yeah, well, you're circling around something that is, I think, in many ways, very, very obvious, but so obvious that it kind of becomes subtle, because the most important piece of this conversation is self-identifying, because that word has a specific meaning to you and a particular set of experiences. And it does and does not line up with your identity and your comfort in so many ways that are unique and particular to you. And that's why it is just asinine to me that anybody could ever think that they could tell somebody else, no, no, you're this. I saw your driver's license. I saw your underwear. Like, I know who you are, because we are all so unique. We have all had these different experiences, and we aren't just inventing labels when we're trying to find ways to describe ourselves accurately. And certainly, we're the only ones that can. I'll get off my soapbox here in just a second, but I guess I just want to take a moment to point out to people that for as much as you might read about or hear about or see bad TV shows referencing Freud and Carl Jung and B.F. Skinner and some of these big names of psychology, the most important one, the one that every therapist you've ever worked with or seen, the person that they are most inspired by, I think, is unquestionably Carl Rogers, a name that doesn't get talked about a lot in our society, but is really fundamental and foundational to the world of counseling. And Rogers' entire thing was this notion that people are experts in themselves, that no therapist, no doctor, nobody could possibly know more about you than you do. And that is such a crucial and fundamental idea that our society loves to dismiss. So I really appreciate you giving us a call tonight and letting us kind of kick that around a little bit.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was a good topic or not because I didn't know if other people felt similarly about that word or possibly other labels on the men's side or people who identify as a men side as for that. I don't know what the other version of tomboy would be. Would it be a tom girl for them? I don't know. I just always heard tomboy.
Yeah, I honestly, like Eve was pointing out, I think it might be tomboy and sissy, which are definitely not equal yet opposite. There's
Right.
certainly an
Yeah.
indication there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll just
Well,
say
I do
before we
appreciate you
say
guys on
goodnight
the
for the
call.
night that if you check the chat for this episode, that there are a lot of people sounding off about their personal experiences with that term tomboy and how it makes different people feel. And I think that that's valid. We're all allowed to have our own relationship with some of these things. It's worth noting that a lot of gender words are actually just recaptured slurs. So while
Yep.
we want to be like careful and respectful of these things, we're all going to have our own unique experience with them. And so long as we are kind and considerate, I think that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. I do appreciate you guys taking this call because you guys have said some things that have provoked some more thought into me that I need to look into. And I since I'm kind of new to this sphere of things, I've never was allowed to like think for myself growing up. So I really appreciate what you guys do on here.
Hey, glad to hear it. Appreciate your bravery and sharing this all with us. You
Yeah,
have a
it was
great
lovely
night tonight.
chatting with you.